$84 trillion is set to change hands over the next 20 years. Whether you're passing it down or inheriting it, the decisions you make today will shape your family's financial future for generations. Welcome to the Great Wealth Transfer, where David Pulcini, CFP, guides you through the strategies, insights, and pitfalls of navigating one of the largest financial shifts in history. What you don't know could redefine your legacy.
Don't simply retire from something. Have something to retire to. And most retirement plans, as you folks know, are built on one assumption. And I've heard this over and over and over again, that you will save enough money and you will spend down your assets over time and just hope that they last and maybe leave something behind. I don't know if that sounds familiar, but I'm going to propose this. What if your plan isn't just about you? What if it needs to work for them too? And them is different for everybody. But today we're going to dive into retirement income planning. That is the second core area in our six-part series of the Great Wealth Transfer, and it's point number 2 in the 6 points of financial planning. So I want to talk about it because we could get this wrong in a couple of ways. We could spend too little in retirement, which I see all the time, and I know that sounds interesting. We could live too modestly. Or, I would say maybe worse, overspend and leave your heirs with confusion, complexity, and responsibility, really. And I'm going to answer that question as we go further on. But before we dive into strategies, I want to hit on some of the real questions I've been hearing from you folks lately on social media, questions that show just how important this topic is. And I want to start with this one to help establish the basics and where I'm coming from throughout this episode. And one of the questions that we got was, what does a financial advisor actually do for retirement planning? What is it you say that you do here? Right? All right. So I get this question all the time. What do you actually do as a financial advisor when it comes to retirement? And the answer is this, and I'm not patting ourselves on the back for all the good advisors out there, but I'll say it's more than most people realize. It is not just picking investments or telling you when to file for Social Security. Retirement planning, when done right, is multi-layered. It's a strategy that helps blend your income, taxes, goals, risk tolerance, healthcare costs, estate plans, family dynamics, all of them into one clear direction, okay? As Duncan McPherson puts it in the Blue Square Method, that's a financial advisory book, and I follow a lot of this guy's stuff. Most people have all of the puzzle pieces. They just don't have the picture on the box. That's what a great advisor does. We put the picture on the box so you know what you're building and what to do next. So what does that mean? What do we help with? We help with income planning, which is creating a reliable retirement paycheck if we need that. We do help with the timing of Social Security and pension decisions, how to take the pension, which options, how does that work? We ensure the surviving spouse is protected if we can, okay? We help coordinate withdrawals across tax buckets, so there's tax strategy involved. Those Roth conversions that we've talked about in low income tax years, or when other opportunities present themselves to do Roth conversions, we want to be on top of it. Managing IRMA, that's the Medicare tax rules, okay? Capital gains and the tax bracket, we'll call it tax bracket creep as those things change. The investment alignment, matching portfolio strategy to real world cash flow, and adjusting your risk based on the phase of life and the goals that you have for different investments, okay? Avoiding asset concentration or poor tax location. I'm going to get more into that. Tax location is a big deal. We've talked about that a lot. Healthcare. A lot of folks have questions about healthcare and long-term care planning. So we want to help our clients navigate Medicare timelines and costs, evaluate long-term care solutions. Do we need it? What does that mean? And build contingency plans for the unexpected. And estate planning coordination. That's what this entire series is about. But within the retirement planning, we want to align beneficiary designations and the titling and make sure that's proper. And then work with attorneys to tie that plan together. And finally, ongoing monitoring, okay? Adjusting your goals and your plan for inflation, market returns, lifestyle shifts. We want to rebalance accounts and update projections and keep things current and proactive, okay? And I will say, this is actually the last point is, I'm adding this in, is behavioral coaching. We want to help people avoid emotional decisions when the market's up, when the markets are way down. How are we handling that? We want to help give our clients confidence during uncertainty and keep your plans centered on your why. So I'll go back to the beginning. When someone asks, what does a financial advisor really do for retirement planning? To sum all of that up, because no one would pay attention to that long of an answer, I would say we take your puzzle pieces and show you the big picture so that you can build a retirement that works for you and for the people that you love, okay? And that I would say is the difference between having just some accounts out there and having a plan, okay? A quick note here too. For clients of ours or any good advisor, I just want you all to know that we are always thinking about these things, all of them, okay? All the time. It's important that you know that, because it is impossible, nearly impossible, unless somebody wants to sit in a meeting for 4 to 10 hours at a time, to bring up all of this in every single meeting. But we want you to know that this is being taken care of as part of our process, okay? Duncan, who I quoted earlier, also says, you don't need to know, you just need to know that we know. And I love that quote. And that leads to looking toward the future with anticipation rather than apprehension, okay? So moving on to the next question here. For many younger investors, I get this a lot, and it's almost always the same number, which I'm going to address in a second. But the question is, how much do I have to save to have $1 million in 30 years? First of all, great question, very common. My initial reaction to that is, why is the number 1 million? And I don't want to answer a question with a question, but I just want you to think about that. Why is it 1 million? And another thing to think about is, what does $1 million look like 30 years from now? Okay, think about that. But for a direct answer, let me give you this. If you want to build $1 million over the next 30 years, here is what you'd need to save monthly, okay? At a 6% rate of return, which we would consider relatively conservative and safe, you would have to save $701 a month, okay? At an 8% return, it goes down to $507 a month. And then at a more aggressive rate of return at 10%, which is pretty high, we would need $342 a month. Okay, you can see just a 4% rate of return compounding makes a big difference. And that's the power of time and compounding, okay? We've all heard this before. The earlier you start, the less painful it is. I have yet to run into somebody that has said, wow, I wish I waited to save, okay? It's easy to say until you're living when you're one of these younger folks, right? But here's the other thing. Building the million is half of the equation. Spending it wisely and passing some of it on is probably the other half. Okay, and that leads to a natural lead into, how much should I have saved by my age group? Okay, this is it has to be one of the most searched retirement questions or just investment questions out there. Based on my age, how much should I have? So a simple benchmark that many financial advisors use as a starting point is this, and I'm gonna make some counterpoints in a second. But by the age of 30, you should have about 1 times your annual income saved. Okay, by the age of 40, 3 times your income, 50, 6 times. And by 60, it says ideally 8 to 10 times your income. And by retirement, let's say 67 years old, 10 to 12 times your income. I would argue it is more than this, especially at the higher ages. And I'll actually explain why when I answer a question coming up. But right now, if you are over 60 years old and you were thinking, I'm way behind, maybe you just need to make some adjustments, okay? It's not too late. I know a lot of folks think it's too late. The old saying is, it's never too late. We can only start from here and go forward, right? So part of it is where smart income planning comes in. So if we use the 4% rule as a general guide for what your portfolio can provide, you can back in to see if you are actually behind, or maybe you're way ahead, which is great too. So let's simplify that 4% answer by answering another question that people ask, which is, again, this has to be the second most common. How much can I spend in retirement if I have X? And here's a quick breakdown using that simple 4% withdrawal rule, okay? The 4% rule, if we haven't heard this, just comes from basically the statistics on how much do I need and how much can I take statistically without ever running out of money. So studies have found that it's around 4%. That can be adjusted. And again, I'm not going to get into that right now, but let's just go by the 4%. So if you have $1 million saved, you can take about $40,000 a year and statistically, most likely never run out of money. So at $2 million, it's $80,000 a year. At $3 million, it's $120,000 a year. So part of that last question that I just answered, I mentioned that I thought at age 60, you should have 10 times your salary. And then I said, I would argue that it might be more. And here's why. If you're making $200,000 at age 60 and you have $2 million saved, could you now live off of $80,000 from your savings? Right? That's part of the puzzle. I get that. There are other factors. We have Social Security, pensions. Maybe your spouse is working. Maybe you're working part-time. Maybe more debts are paid off. But again, this is just something to consider when you see general guidelines after searching them on the internet, okay? But let's keep this in mind. Where that money is held can matter just as much as how much you have, okay? What I mean by that is if it's in IRAs, traditional IRAs, the 401ks, 403bs, taxes come out when you take that money out. In a Roth, it's tax-free. In a brokerage account, it depends on gains and basis, but that's part of the planning. And that is why I say income planning is tax planning, okay? Let's get into 3 pitfalls that can derail the legacy. And again, just 3 things that I see pretty commonly is, I'll call it the over-reliance on RMDs. Maybe over-reliance is a bad word, but most people, my point is, they let the IRS tell them how much to withdraw. So when you get to a certain age, 72, 73, 74, 75, by the time we get there, the IRS tells us how much we have to take. Okay, RMDs are a tax rule. It's not a retirement plan. Okay, so how do we deal with that? Right, so there's strategies behind that. The number 2 thing that can derail the retirement plan is just no withdrawal strategy at all. It's just pulling from whatever account has money in it. And that is basically a recipe for tax inefficiency and even further down the line, a lost legacy, okay? And then number 3 is not planning for the survivor. If one spouse passes, income usually drops, okay? But taxes may go up. And we can get into that in a different video, but we just want to make sure we plan for that, okay? With the great wealth transfer, obviously the goal isn't just don't run out of money, it's to leave something behind intentionally. So all of those things that I just mentioned, we want to plan for. But first, I always say this, we need to take care of yourself. It's like that oxygen mask on the airplane. Take care of yourself first, and then we can take care of others. But let's plan for your own income needs. Let's manage taxes for your heirs, okay? And making sure your money can serve after that multiple generations. Let me give you a real example here. Joe and Linda, they came in, they're 67 years old. This is a hypothetical client. Let's say they retired with $3 million. Very common scenario here. The $1.5 million in an IRA, $1 million in a brokerage after-tax account, and then $500,000 in a Roth. Okay, all 3 of those are different tax rules and advantages or disadvantages, I could say, right? So their old plan, before they came in, I would say, people read this all the time. Let's spend our brokerage first, then the IRA, then the Roth, or whatever it might be. The updated strategy was to actually take modest IRA withdrawals now, convert to Roth while taxes are low, and we could delay some Social Security to maximize their future income, okay? And the result of this could be something like $450,000 in tax savings over their lifetime, which leaves more money in the Roth. And that is more money and clarity for their kids, because when the kids get it, they're not paying taxes on it, okay? So just by moving some things around and shifting how we're taking it, we can usually help folks with saving a lot of money for them and then for their children, okay? Or whoever they want it to go to. There's a book out there called Die with Zero, and it actually has become like a whole philosophy, I would say. So to take a pause here, retirement income planning, we're going to talk about the behavioral side. It's not just about the numbers on the spreadsheet. I've run into this over and over and over again. I would say it's how you experience this chapter of your life. And again, the Die with Zero by Bill Perkins goes through this. It's one of my favorite books. And the core belief behind it is the goal is actually not to die with the most money. The goal is to live fully, spend intentionally, and transfer wealth Well, it still has the most meaning. Okay. And you folks know this, to be honest, your kids probably need more help in their 30s than they do in their 60s. And you might enjoy travel more in your 60s and 70s than in your 80s and 90s. We have seen clients pass away with millions and probably inevitable regrets, right? They never took the big trip. They never saw the joy on their grandkids' faces from a well-timed gift or a shared experience. And that's the emotional truth. A successful retirement isn't just about not running out of money. It's about not running out of time to use it meaningfully. Money's just a tool, right? Let's use it. And that is the balance that a good advisor will help people find between the freedom today and the security for tomorrow, okay? And it's a really important topic that you get into as you work closely, more and more closely with an advisor. So I'm going to talk about the other side of this because this is a question I got, and this is very common. And the question is, what if my parents didn't save for retirement? This is becoming a huge issue. Many people in their 40s and 50s are realizing, I am my parents' retirement plan. If they didn't save, you are left to figure this out, okay? Where are they going to live? How are they going to fund medical care? What does this mean for your own retirement? So let's talk about what you can do if this is the reality for you. And I'm going to give you 5 quick steps. And the first one, if your parents didn't save for retirement, is, or you don't think they're going to be able to handle it, is I would just say, and this sounds easy, and I'm going to get to an action plan in a second, but start the conversation early. It's obviously uncomfortable, but it's essential. And what I would say is, and this sounds easy for me because I do this every day, but find out what do they actually have, okay? Let's start with, what's their Social Security look like? Do they have a pension? What's their home equity if they own a home? And then what do they expect from you? And what's realistic, okay? What documents are currently in place? Do they have a healthcare proxy, a power of attorney, a will, the trust, all of that? Silence on this stuff leads to crisis, and clarity leads to planning, okay? And we need to get a clear financial picture. Even if it's uncomfortable for them, we could build a mini financial plan. You could do this, write it out. What is their monthly income? Okay, what do they have coming in versus what is going out? That's why I always say, how much do we need and where's it going to come from? What are their debts? Okay, and then what's their healthcare and prescription costs? It literally treat them like a client, as if you were a financial advisor, by going through that process, okay? Because again, without a plan, you become the plan. And then I would explore public and private resources, which is like Medicare does not cover long-term care. Medicaid might, but it has strict rules, okay? Look into community programs, senior housing options, and assisted living that scales costs based on income, okay? If they're homeowners, consider how that equity could be part of the plan. And then build boundaries into your own plan. So supporting your parents may be part of your future, but it should not, I said this before, it should not replace your own retirement plan. Maybe we create a caregiving fund inside of your income strategy, but we have to set boundaries for how much help you can actually realistically provide. Because if helping them jeopardizes your future, you are, honestly, we're just repeating that cycle for our kids, okay? And then number 5 is, if you need to involve a professional, this is maybe something you should not have to navigate alone, but a good financial advisor can model out different scenarios, help you prioritize spending and savings and caregiving, coordinate with the attorneys. We've talked a lot about that. And then the CPA. And most importantly, they can give you permission to plan for yourself too, right? So my final thought on this, it's not selfish to protect your future. It's responsible. This is a rough one, but like, your parents' lack of planning doesn't mean you have to lose sleep or sacrifice your own dreams. I know it sounds bad, but it is true. It does mean that you may need to adjust and prepare, and most importantly, talk about it, okay? So another question I get about parents, just to go on this tangent, is what happens when they can't live alone anymore? So this is when no plan really does become your emergency. So maybe we ask them this: do they want to age in place? Do they have long-term care coverage? Can the family support them physically, financially, or emotionally? And the biggest cost people underestimate in retirement is not the lifestyle, it's actually elder care. So if you want to protect your own retirement and your future legacy, you need to factor this into the income strategy now. So if it is helpful, I would say take this clip. We'll probably clip this out and send it directly to your parents. And you could use this to get your conversation started and just say, hey, I was thinking, this made me think of us. What do we have going on? And maybe that helps get it going. Okay. So I hope that adds a little bit of value. Let me get one more common question before we wrap up here. And I want to answer this. Very common, folks. Should I pay off debt before I retire or keep saving? And my favorite answer as a financial advisor, it depends. And here's some simple guidance, okay? So this is total blanket advice, but if you have high interest debt, pay it off, right? That's a guaranteed return. If high interest, pay it off. We can keep that interest in our own pocket. Low interest mortgage maybe, or I guess student loans. I don't know if they're low interest right now, but maybe we keep them and invest the difference, okay? But the real answer is I would not let it derail your own flexibility. I would usually say it should create some breathing room. The plan should create some breathing room, not pressure. And for many people, let me add this in because I may be one of them. It is actually not about the numbers. Sometimes we hear this, you should go leverage debt. If you can get debt at 5%, you can get a guaranteed 7% while you're making 2%. But for a lot of people, there is a mental price to pay for having these nagging debts just hanging over us, which means by default that there is a value in alleviating that debt, even if it's not something you could put on a spreadsheet, okay? So that's just something to consider and understand here if you are not one of those folks, okay? As an advisor, let me talk about the approach that we take in the retirement income planning. Retirement income is, I would say, the heartbeat of your entire financial life. It is where all of the points collide. The tax strategy, the investment planning, the estate, risk management, all of it comes together when we're talking about retirement planning. That's why we want to take a comprehensive view, okay? It's not just about investments. It's about, again, how much do we need? Where's it going to come from? What is the tax impact today for you and 20 years from now? And then what will be left behind, okay? This is a process. It's not a product, not trying to sell you something. So you deserve a plan that works for everyone you care about, not just you. And I think you know that. So in the next episode, we'll be covering risk management, which is the often overlooked area that protects your plan from being blown off course. And until then, if you're wondering, is my income plan truly built to serve both me and the people I care about the most? If that's a question that's bothering you, shoot us a message or reach out. And for now, make it a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Great Wealth Transfer Podcast. If this podcast resonates with you, reach out to 6 Point Financial Partners at 585-485-6048 or email dpulcini at 6pointfp.com.
Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security or engage in any specific trading strategy. All investing involves risk, including loss of principal. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. Information here is provided in part by third-party sources. These sources are generally deemed to be reliable. However, neither 6 Point Financial Partners, Private Client Services, nor RFG Advisory guarantee the accuracy of third-party sources. The views expressed here are those of 6 Point Financial Partners. They do not necessarily represent those of Private Client Services, RFG Advisory, their employees, or their clients. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by 6 Point Financial Partners or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Securities offered by registered representatives through Private Client Services. Member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory LLC, RFG Advisory, or RFG. A registered investment advisor. Private Client Services, 6 Point Financial Partners, and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.